This is Mr. Wistar again. In this lesson, we're going to learn about how to implement packed arrays, which is the type of data structure that an array list is. So in this lesson, we're really going to kind of look under the hood and see how a class like ArrayList works. We're going to talk about why you might want to use a packed array in your program and why you might even want to use your own packed array, and then go through the change in syntax for adding and removing things from a packed array. So just to review, when we talk about packed arrays, we're talking about an array where the first element is stored in index 0 and then all the other elements are stored in consecutive positions after that. In other words, there's no holes in the array. All of the elements are stored together at the beginning of the array, just like in an array list. Now, why might you want to use a packed array, or especially why might you want to create your own packed array class? Well, one reason why having a packed array is oftentimes essential is that you want to just have one set of data that you can traverse from beginning to end very easily without having to worry about skipping over any blank spots. As far as, why don't you just use an array list all the time? Well, you don't really know how an array list is implementing its methods. And maybe you think that there's a way that you can implement part of your array list code a little bit more efficiently, or have it do exactly what you want it to do. If you wanted to, say, sort your data, you could choose which algorithm you use to sort your data instead of depending on the array list to make its own decisions. So it's important that you understand how packed arrays work and how you can implement them yourself. The syntax for adding and removing in a packed array is a little bit different because we have to keep everything together. I'm not going to show you any difference in code for accessing an item in a packed array because it's no different. You just use the name of the array and then the index in square brackets, just like with any other built-in array. But as far as adding items to a packed array goes, one thing you'll notice here is that in addition to having a class variable for the actual array in a packed array, you need to have a second class variable that keeps track of how many items are actually in that array. You don't technically have to have one of those, but it makes your job a lot easier. So when you see my_num_else here, that's what that variable is. Now let's take the easy case. If you want to just add something to the end of an array, just like you were calling the add method on an array list. In that case, all you have to do is put that item into the array at the slot of your my_num_else variable. Because if you think about it, the value of the number of elements in the array is also equal to the index of the spot where you would put the next thing in your array, because the index of the last element in the array, in any array, is always equal to the number of elements in the array minus 1. So the number of elements itself is where you're going to put the next item. So you just put it in that spot and then add 1 to the number of elements. As long as you are careful about how you increment and decrement my_num_else, you should always be able to locate easily the location of the next thing you need to put in your array. As far as adding item to the middle of your array, that's where things get a little bit complicated because there's no holes in a packed array, so in order to put something in your array, you need to make a hole. And we'll see how this works in a little bit. But in order to make a hole, what we're going to do is we're going to start at the end of the array, start at AR bracket my_num_else, and we're going to copy each element in the array over one spot to the right, working our way backwards till we get to the place where we want to put the thing that we're adding to the array. So what we're doing there is kind of shifting everything over until eventually we create a hole at the right spot, and then we can just stick our new item into that hole and add 1 to the number of elements. As far as removing things from a packed array, again, there's the easy case and the hard case. And the easy case in this case is real easy. If you're going to remove the last item in a packed array, all you have to do is subtract 1 from the number of elements. It sounds like you need to do more than that, but if you think about it, subtracting 1 from the number of elements means that the next time you go to add something to the end of the array, you'll put it in, you'll overwrite the location of where the last item in the array is right now. which has the effect of deleting it. So all you have to do if you're going to remove something from the end of a packed array is just subtract 1 from min_else. If you're going to remove something from the middle of a packed array, again, that makes things a little more complicated. Taking something out of the middle of a packed array creates a hole, and we have to fill that hole. And the way that we're going to do that is the opposite of what we did for adding. So what we're going to do is we're going to start looping, this time from left to right, starting at the spot where we removed something. And what we're going to just do for each item from that spot to the end of the array is we're going to copy over the element that's to the right. So for adding something, we moved everything over to the right. For removing something, we're going to take everything and move it over to the left. And that will have the effect of filling in the hole and deleting the thing from that spot in the array. I didn't mention it in the slides here, but if your removal method needs to save that item that you deleted, then the first step that you should follow in either case is to save that array item to a temporary variable so that you can return it. We talked about adding things to an array, we've talked about removing things from an array. Last thing before we take a look at some code is, again, to review how to resize a packed array, because that becomes an issue if your array is full. You can't add anything to the array anymore. If you need to expand the size of a packed array, there's 3 steps you need to follow. The first step is to create a brand new array that's got a temporary variable name that's bigger than the size of the old array. And then what you need to do is use a loop to copy each element in the old array into the same spot in the new array. It's really important that you maintain the same spots so that your program can find things in the places where it expects to find them. Once you've copied everything over using your loop, then the last step, all you need to do is to assign the new variable name to the old variable name. And that will have the effect from the point of view of the rest of your program of making the array bigger, because now the old array reference variable is pointing to the new array object, which is bigger. Okay, let's take a look at some code. So we've got a packed array class here. I've created methods for adding something and then also adding something to the end of the array and removing something from the array. It's just following all the pseudocode that we looked at in the slides. But what I really want to do is to run this code through the debugger and have you see what happens so you can really see what we're talking about creating and removing those holes from our packed array. So let's fire up the debugger. When we got to this point in our program, notice that we've already run these 4 add statements, and so if we jump into this program, or to this method, and take a look at our array, we can see that we've already got those values in our array, 0, 1, 2, 3. So what we're going to do is we need to make a hole. We're going to make a hole at spot number 1. So what we need to do is, starting at spot number 4, we need to shift everything over 1 position to the right. So if we follow through our loop here, you can see that 3 gets copied, the 2 gets copied, the 1 gets copied, and now we have a place, we've created a hole in index number 1. So we're going to take our value right here, value number 4, stick it into slot number 1, and add 1 to the number of elements. And that's how we add something to the middle of a packed array. As far as removing something goes, we'll take a look at that too. Jump into our remove method. Again, what we're going to be removing right now is the element at position 2, which is the number 1. First thing is we subtract 1 from the number of elements so that the loop runs properly. And now, starting at that position in the array, looping until the last element in the array, what we're going to do is we're going to copy each element over 1 position to the left. So we're going to replace 1 with 2, we're going to replace 2 with 3, and now we're done. Notice that we still have this 3 hanging out there in the middle of nowhere. Again, we don't care about that because the next time we call add, it's going to get replaced. So we've removed the 1 successfully, and now we have just 0, 4, 2, 3. Okay, let's recap what we talked about in this lesson. We talked about why you'd want to use a packed array to store the data in your program, and why you'd want to create your own packed array class. And then we talked about the complications that you run into when you add something to the middle of a packed array or when you remove something from the end of a packed array. All right, you're all set.